A resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, providing the interlocal agreement for the election services between the City of Williston and the Levy County Supervisor of Elections, authorizing appropriate parties to sign any documents required to execute such agreement on the behalf of the City of Williston and provide an effective date. Ms. Kirsten Ballou.
Right, Mr. President, this is our, every election season we have an interlocal agreement with the Supervisor of Elections for Levy County. It is the best, most efficient way to run our elections is to partner with a supervisor. This is in substantially the same form as the agreement that you saw last year. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it essentially assists us with ballot printing services, with polling lists, and all the other things that go into making sure that we run our elections. We do it every year because there are sometimes deviations in what we need and when we need them. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Council, you have any questions?
I second.
All right, we have a first, we have a second. All right. Any other discussion? No? Anybody? No? All right. We'll move to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Item K, Resolution 2025-110. Item 2025-10, Resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, approving the 2025 General Municipal Election date and process and establish an effective date. City Manager Terry Brevard.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. So, Latricia, obviously, the city clerk is out, and she's asked me to present this on her behalf. I did talk to Latricia, the city clerk, and basically she did that. We had a discussion with y'all, I think, the last city council meeting, where we talked about the upcoming elections and who is going to be available, who's going to be running, who is not. And she states that these are the actual groups that are coming out. So.
Okay.
So unless y'all are in disagreement with it, like I said, this is the one she actually said, Group A, Group B, Group C.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Not entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2025-10.
All right. Get the motion made. Got a second? Any other discussion? Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0.
Mr. President, before we move on from that, I just want to say out loud, in case anyone's listening, the official qualifying period begins at noon on January 20th, 2025, and ends at noon Friday, January 24th, 2025. So that is your official qualifying period.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next we're for an open public hearing. Item L.
Mr. President, this is the second reading of ordinance number 2024-739. This is an ordinance of the City of Williston, Florida, providing for the permanent closing of the unimproved road right-of-ways, a part of Brevard Street, a part of Columbia Street, and a part of Michigan Avenue, per the recorded plat, Hillcrest Union 1, number 1, as recorded in Plat Book 2, page 5 of the Public Records of Levy County in Williston, Florida, that lie within parcel ID number 06114-000-00, an approximate area of 2.178 acres, more or less, and a description as in Exhibit A, finding that the closing of the road right-of-way will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date. This is a quasi-judicial matter, so the first thing that I will ask of this body is whether anyone has had any ex parte communications regarding this matter.
Nope.
No. All right, I see 4 notes. Next item of business, other than the items that are included in the agenda materials, if anyone wishes for any documents or materials to be considered by this board or made part of the record of this hearing, please bring them forth to the clerk to be made part of the record at this time. right, Mr. President, at this time, if there's anyone who intends to speak on this matter, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You are duly sworn. Okay, Mr. President, now would be the appropriate time for staff presentation on this item.
Ms. Laura?
My agenda's a little strange, but you guys saw this 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when we came to our first reading. This is the property over by the what did you say, the church? North of the church,
South Cemetery.
the big one. This gentleman owns all of these. Like, if you look at this plat, it looks like it says blocks. He owns these properties, and he has some roads going through them that we're not going to build on. Staff has already looked at them. They're basically just old roads that went with an old plat, and he would like us to vacate these roads so that he could use that property more efficiently. I know Ms. Jones had some questions last time about neighbors, I think it was. And so Steve McMillan handed out an aerial so that you could see a little bit better where this is located in regards to those neighbors. But staff has no problems with this. It meets our code, and utilities department said they had no future plans to improve these roads.
Anything additional from staff? Okay, applicant's presentation.
Happy New Year, Steve McMillan, surveyor. Although the survey on the screen is an awesome looking map, I forgot about the meeting, so I haphazardly, the last minute, made these aerial photographs that came out too dark, and in an attempt to give y'all a little better idea of where these roads are. But we've talked about these roads even when we closed them for the church 15 years ago, I guess. Same old 1925 flat, I think. The roads obviously were never constructed. They were dedicated to the city, and now my client touches both sides of these roads, and he's allowed to ask for y'all to vacate it, which does come onto, it will go on to the ad valorem tax base, which is another couple acres that he'll be paying taxes on that he'll be able to collect from. But it's really not a big thing. Did you see anything over here? I didn't have you raise your hand, so. Yeah. Yeah, into 8 blocks, really. Well, in front of on this particular survey, 6 blocks.
Okay. Is there anything further from the applicant?
No.
All right. Mr. President, now would be the appropriate time for any public comment if there is any.
All right. Anybody from the public got any comments? No.
All right. Is there any rebuttal from staff?
No.
Any rebuttal from the applicant?
None.
Any closing argument from staff?
Staff recommends vacating the roads.
Any closing from the applicant?
Surveyor recommends it also so we can get paid.
A noble cause. Mr. President, now is the appropriate time for council deliberation on this item.
All right, council.
When you advertise, did you hear from anybody?
That's a good question. Nicole usually fields those, and if it's something she can't answer, she'll typically come to me. I believe we talked to the church, but they didn't have a problem with it.
I think he was here at the last meeting. Eric.
But other than that, we haven't gotten any other complaints.
Okay.
Anybody else? No? All right, so I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move approval on second reading of ordinance 2024-739.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
Thank you.
All right, item M.
All right, Mr. President, this is ordinance number 2025-740, an ordinance of the City of Williston, Florida, amending the City of Williston Code of Ordinances as amended, providing for the amendment of Chapter 28 of the Williston Code of Ordinances to add Chapter 28, Section 5, prohibiting public camping or sleeping on any public property, public building, or public right-of-way, providing for codification, providing for appeal of conflicting ordinances, providing severability, providing for incorporation in the City Code of Ordinances, and providing an effective date. So a little bit of background on this.
Yeah.
On March of 20th of last year, the governor signed into law House Bill 1365, which has been colloquially referred to as the public sleeping law. It's also been referred to as public camping. Essentially, the new law requires that municipalities, except for under very, very limited circumstances, none of which I believe exist in Williston, must prohibit public camping or sleeping as defined in the statute. It opens up, it permits private business owners and residents to bring suit against any municipalities who do not take steps to prohibit public sleeping and public camping. And so what we have done, what I've done in cooperation with your chief of police, is put together this ordinance for you all. There is not a lot in here that is specifically outlined in the law. These are our recommendation, our thoughts based on what other municipalities in similarly situated areas have done. I will point out to you that really the only thing that you're required to do is prohibit public sleeping or camping. One of the things that the police chief and I have talked about at length is, in order to say that you're prohibiting something, there needs to be a way for you to enforce that prohibition. You can't just say you're not allowed to do this and then not have any teeth behind it, because it's really going to sort of open you up to the potential of someone, a business owner, or a private resident, coming forth and saying that you're not actually prohibiting this prohibited activity. And so we've done our best to sort of guesstimate and put together and cobble together for you all some thoughts. I want to go over sort of each section because I do think that it's brand new. It's a brand new law, and it's new to all the municipalities. So I think that it's worth looking over. So if you'll go to page 154. Okay. So what you are going to see in the first section is basically the findings, which essentially says that there is a requirement that you all put together a prohibition on public camping, that is in the best interest of your citizens and your city, which is a general finding that we have in almost every single one of your resolutions and ordinances regarding anything that you pass for the city, that it ensures the health, safety, welfare, quality of life, and aesthetics. The next section is your intent section, which generally sort of parrots language from the law and from materials presented with the House Bill 1355, which is essentially the reasoning behind the prohibition. And then we get into definitions. The definition sections are laid out in the Florida statute. Those we can't really change. That is how public sleeping or camping is defined, and those are the exclusions. So lodging or residing overnight in a motor vehicle that's registered, insured, and located in a place where it may lawfully be, or camping for recreational purposes on property designated is not considered public sleeping or camping. So really, we're calling this public sleeping and camping. Really what this is generally speaking your homeless population sleeping and residing in public right of way. Essentially is what it really targets. The next section is your violations. Nothing in the violations is laid out in the Florida statute, so this is really the section where your chief and I have had to do our upshot best of providing you with what other municipalities have done in order to balance the realities of finding homeless people, keeping track of fines, and also complying with Florida state statute, which says that you have to prohibit these activities, and allowing your police chief to be able to actually enforce any ordinance that you all pass. So we do recognize, and I don't want anyone to shoot the messenger here. I want to make it really clear that these are our best guesses as to how we can best assist in the enforcement of this prohibition that we are required to implement. So I'm happy to go over each of these a little more, just so that everyone is aware. The police chief and I have reached out to other municipalities and other law enforcement agencies to see sort of about the logistics, the real world process of how we're going to keep track of this, how we're going to enforce court appearances, how we're going to keep track of which violation it is, the realities of if someone is trespassed, where are they trespassed from, just this area of the sidewalk, just the whole block, just this building. I mean, there are a lot of questions that the law really doesn't address, and lots of real world logistical obstacles that we don't have all the answers for yet. But we're working on getting that done. As of January 1st, 2025, you all are in a position where you must prohibit this activity. So this is why this is in front of you.
Mayor? Thank you, Mr. President. The state statute, as I'm reading it on here, is municipalities are prohibited from authorizing or allowing any person to regularly engage, not ever, just regularly engage. That's a huge difference from someone falling asleep on public property. So that means that you have to actually find these people are doing this repetitively in order to enforce this law. Is that accurate?
So it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So the definitions that you have in the statute. So if you look at the definitions that we have here under C, those are copy paste from the statute. Okay, so those are exact. And what these definitions are is public camping or sleeping as lodging or residing overnight in a temporary outdoor habitation used as a dwelling or living space, evidenced by the erection of a tent or other temporary shelter, presence of bedding or pillows for storage of personal belongings, or lodging or residing overnight in an outdoor space without a tent or other temporary shelter. So I think to your point, this does sort of put, and this is one of the logistical sort of hurdles that we have based on statutory definitions, which is your police officers are going to be in a position that they're going to have to make a determination of if someone is asleep outside in a public place, is that lodging or residing overnight. And so we do recognize that that's not terribly clear, but it is a little bit more nuanced than someone who's habitually doing it. The statute requires that public camping or sleeping is.
I understand the
primary.
reason for the statute, and I agree with the reason, but the logistics are a little
We agree.
because nothing. So if they sleep on public property in their car, it's perfectly acceptable.
No.
That's
Is
right.
it doesn't
Right
say
there.
anything about a car?
It
Yes,
does.
it
In
does.
a different place.
A different place. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not there, but in a different place. She read it. My question was, can you sleep in your car on private property?
So you can.
It's all. It says very clearly public
Public
property.
It does. So I think
Right.
I think they can sleep in them in the parking.
That
And a
that was another thing. As these campers go across country, they know certain stores allow them to camp in their stores. That's not public property. That's private property.
Right.
Correct. And we're obviously, for private property, the private property owner has the ability to call law enforcement regarding enforcement of any trespassing or moving people along if they don't wish them to be there. But as long as they have the right to be there on public or private property, that's fine. What this really targets is public property.
I know in August when we attended the Florida League of Cities conference, I'm a little bit dangerous here because I went to a workshop about this. And the main purpose of the workshop was to tell municipalities not to agree to be the place where they are housed,
Not to be what?
not to be the place that's designated that the homeless people can go to be housed.
Yes, there's several cities that tried that.
It said that counties are required to designate a place.
Exactly.
And that the county may approach you, meaning the city, to be the place where they can come and be the designated place. And it was sort of warning all of us to not buy into that, to not agree to be the designated spot, or we would end up with all the homeless people from Levy County. They were telling us about it at the time. And I don't have any problem with the way you have it written here. The only question I have is about what we do with the money and who we give it to. Because if there's not a designated spot in Levy County, there's going to have to be, because evidently the statute says they have to designate a spot or a place where we can all send our people. If we've got homeless people, that's where we send them.
Well, as far as the
So
money
it's that
goes,
who we give the money to. Number one, I don't think we're ever going to collect money from homeless people.
right?
I'm thinking
Exactly.
The same thing.
Because
If
they don't
you got
have it.
someone sleeping in the street,
Exactly.
you're going to collect money from them?
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
and I work with them every day, just
Mhm.
like you do. They come to my office at church, and they all want assistance of one kind or another. Some I can help, some I can't. Usually, if it's too bad, I call police, and I ask them to escort them somewhere. To help them. To take them to the next city, to take them to Ocala or Gainesville, to take them to another way. If they're a domestic and violent person that's engaged in running, try to get them help in some way. But yeah.
Yeah, as far as the funding, there's no requirement in the statute with what you as a municipality have to do with the funding. Obviously, counties have different requirements, but that's sort of not our responsibility to enforce. So, in the event that any money was ever garnered from this, which I'm not confident would actually be the case, but you all could decide how to use that.
Unless it's some local person who's looking.
Right.
Some municipalities have used it in the same way that they use regular fees that are collected for any other law enforcement action. Some municipalities have designated that they want those fees to be held separately and used for public purposes of assisting people facing homelessness. So you all can really be creative there.
Yeah, it says that in there.
It says
It says a nonprofit.
it says we give it to a nonprofit.
Nonprofit that will assist homeless. Yes.
And I just asked who that might be because I don't know if the county says yet.
It don't have to be in the county. It could be any organization, any nonprofit organization that has programs or that assist homelessness people. So it could be the Salvation Army. It could be anybody that you choose to.
And the point that I wanted to make is that you all get to
haven't helped
decide
me yet,
that.
so there.
Yeah, right.
But it's somebody local. I've thought of 3 or 4 times over people that have had. I don't know if you remember during one of the hurricanes, they ripped off all the electric on somebody's house. And the man couldn't stay in it because he couldn't get it fixed because it's still in the middle of a hurricane. And they were told he couldn't occupy the house. I called the Salvation Army. I called everybody you could think of to try to help him. And I couldn't get any help for him.
Mr. Bishop.
Yes, Section D, violations all city code enforcement and law enforcement officers are hereby authorized to enforce this section as follows. My personal opinion is I don't know that I would feel comfortable with Dawn going up to a scene and not knowing the background.
No, and I would agree with Mr. Bishop wholeheartedly. When it comes to exercising this code or this statute, they need to have the training and the professionalism of a law enforcement officer.
That part of the statute.
It's not a requirement by the
That part's not
statute,
part
so
of
we
the
can absolutely make that change.
Some cities do allow the code enforcement officers to take that action. I don't know where Don's at with his status, so we can always strike that out.
Yeah, I think this issue is going to take a lot of police officers.
Oh yeah.
Because they are still human.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's all that's the presentation that I have for you. I'm happy to answer any other questions that anyone might have, or make any other changes if anyone is this ordinance does need to be read twice.
Okay. Funny didn't say first reading. Okay, I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2025-740 first reading.
A second.
All right, got a first, got a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
4-0. All right, now we close the public hearing. All right, item N, resolution 2025-11, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, reappointing Glenn Marsh to the City of Williston Police Officers Pension Plan and Trust Board for a period of 2 years, beginning January 6, 2025 and ending January 5th, 2027, and providing an effective date. City Manager Terry Brevard.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, as you know, this is the police officer's pension is presented by Captain Portney. And basically says, you know, I know there's some discussion last time of the makeup of what the general employee is. But however, the one that actually is the one for the police officers, you know, it's very defined where there's 2 police officers, 2 people by the city, and they pick a 5th one. I have not actually talked to Latricia, so Glenn Marsh is who?
I just asked that question. Who is Glenn Marsh?
Okay, so that's got to be the 5th person that was picked.
Yeah, it's got to be the 5th.
They
yeah.
are the one they agree upon together.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So we would not have this name coming from Captain Portney.
It would have to be a name that they all agreed on.
Yes.
So